Hey, this is Pradeep with Sensatura, and today, for the last video of 2025, as usual, I'm sharing my best fragrance additions over the last 12 months, plus discussing a bit on the year as a whole. 2025 seems to have some added weight to it because of the completion of a quarter century. In some ways, it feels like closing one olfactory chapter and entering another. We had quite a few brands celebrating their 10, 20, 25-year anniversaries. For instance, Tower Perfumes, Parfum d'Empire, Frederic Malle, and more had some sort of milestones this year. Launching more and more designer exclusives has kind of become the norm. In general, the volume of releases is at an all-time high again. So on one hand, we have the most choices we ever had. On the other, there is also the illusion of choice, with all the consolidation, takeover of the industry by only a few flavoring houses and so forth. Niche fragrances really took off, gave us a lot of memorable creations. Now in 2025, they have grown so big to the point that the lines are completely blurred. I don't think those labels mean much anymore. Luxury fragrances, yes, because of the cost. Speaking of which, costs are at an all-time high now. So I have seen some slowdown of enthusiasm in a few hobbyist circles, while the wider commercial side of things has continued to grow exponentially. In fact, it is expected to double by 2035, according to some reports. It should be interesting to watch and compare the trends, the type of creations from now on with those from the last 25 years. Right now, I think it's good that more and more people, even the brands themselves, are pragmatic. It's not all creative fatigue. There's more transparency than before. Quite a few of them are doing some amazing work. They are passionate, their creations are made with intention rather than just a business venture. It just takes more time to sift through all that noise to get to them. Personally, I also find myself falling back to some fragrances I already have, brands that I really fell in love with early on and appreciating them more. I have seen a few others even selling off things that they don't enjoy anymore. So I think there is some balance. It's always a good place to be. Bringing back the focus to 2025, some brands that I regularly follow did not release anything this year. No Frederic Malle, no Chanel Lace Exclusive or Hermès. Some others like Parfum d'Empire and Serge Lutens did. I discovered some new brands that sound promising. Apart from the continuing trends like elixir flankers, gourmand fragrances, room filling, aroma chemical heavy concoctions, minimalist musks and so forth, the kind of connecting thread that stood out for me as a theme was nostalgia. We are seeing it in all forms of art, be it media, films, music, and of course fragrances. Be it creating more flankers, resurrection of long-gone brands, recreating smells from a different era, to re-releasing vintage fragrances, bringing back discontinued fragrances and such. Some brands are even taking the same name and presentation of beloved fragrances, especially designers, trying to reformulate and relaunch them in hopes of getting more attention. It has only motivated me to be even more selective about the things I buy. With all that being said, I have 10 fragrances here, 5 that were actually released this year, 5 from before. There are some releases from this year that I did like, but ultimately ended up not buying. I will leave them in the description. So let's go over the list in no particular order, and in the end, I will also share my wish list for 2026. Starting off with some releases from this year, first is a flanker of a legendary designer fragrance. This is Déclaration Eau de Parfum. I have done a full review. This year, I found a couple of designers that I really liked after a while. Of course, it's from brands like Cartier and Hermès, so not that surprising. I find them to be in their own category in comparison to other designers, so I still get excited to check out anything new from them. I enjoy the original Déclaration EDT composed by Jean-Claude Ellena. My other favorites from this line are the D'un Soir flanker, which is unfortunately now discontinued, and the Parfum version. And yes, this is one of those cases where the Parfum came before the EDP. This to me is a warm spices focused take on the Déclaration theme. It's not trying anything drastically different, a genuine flanker in that sense. It's more of an extrapolation that spotlights specific spices. There's a lot of cardamom, my favorite spice, a dusting of cinnamon, along with a spicy, woody, semi-sweet ginger that kind of carries inner freshness. Alongside the spices is a well-measured chai tea accord. The most noticeable shift is that the cumin has been significantly toned down compared to the original. It settles on this woody base of cedar and sandalwood, a little sweet and creamy. It has kind of become a signature for Cartier. It does not lean into the ambre, leathery territory of the Parfum, nor the airy, musky side of the EDT. Instead, it sits comfortably in between. A very balanced composition that way. Exactly what you would expect from an eau de parfum. Really classy with an air of charm. Of course, one could argue it's predictable and not particularly groundbreaking, but it is a well-rounded flanker that smells fantastic, to the point that it has become my current favorite iteration of Déclaration. After that is a fragrance from a new brand, Spoturno Paris. It is indeed a resurrection of the brand of Coty as a smaller niche brand by a family member. The bigger corporation called Coty is still around. So this is named differently for legal reasons, I reckon. I have done a dedicated video on the 5 fragrances from this brand, all composed by Christopher Sheldrake. One of the earlier releases was simply called 1921, supposed to be a recreation of Emerald. I thought it was fantastic. They also did an EDP version of 1921, along with 3 brand new releases. Amongst those, the one that stood out for me was Barbicaja. Apparently, the Coty family were known for their orange cultivation in the Ajaccio Bay in Corsica, and that's the setting this tries to capture. The scent itself is not a fruity orange scent or anything. It's more so reminiscent of 70s, 80s, breezy, crisp, cool, floral, chypre fragrances. Very fresh, mineralic, a little aqueous and green. It has the classic floral bouquet, bringing together orange blossom, lily of the valley, hyacinth, tuberose, jasmine and so forth, but it is completely abstract. A prominent green attribute supported by galbanum, it settles on this mossy, earthy, evening garden at a rich estate by the beach, that kind of scent. There is certainly a bucolic touch, breezy, carefree, just stunning. The caveat is going to be the price. In fact, it has increased from 260 to 320 euros for a 60 ml. I did not pay that. I think it's just too much to ask now. Really wish it wasn't that high. Next, we are going to another flanker, this time from Hermès, and it is not the Terre d'Hermès Intense flanker. I'm not fully convinced by that one yet. This is Barénia Intense, composed by Christine Nagel. I did a first impression of this at the time of release with a bottle that I borrowed from a friend. I eventually decided to get a 50 ml from a discounter. That's another thing. I'm trying to stick to smaller size bottles whenever possible. Now, the original Eau de Parfum, released in 2024, kind of left me conflicted. On paper, it sounded promising. What ultimately held it back for me was the reliance on highly stylized materials, most notably Akigala wood. The stylistic choices felt imposed, kind of lending the composition this processed, overly engineered quality that distanced me from the scent. The marketing only added to the confusion. They framed it as the house's first sheep after a decade of development and such. In a way, it could be considered a high-tech sheep, which is what I called it in my review. It is a similar term they used with H24 EDT for their men's pillar, calling it a high-tech fougere. But what I was smelling was a strange, unconvincing fruit chuli with highly diffusive musks. The intense version, I think, improves upon the original in many ways. The spirit of the EDP is still there, but the fruitiness is more dominant, almost like a stewed liquor meets quince jam-like smell and texture. The floral nuances from the butterfly lily seem more streamlined. The fruit chuli styling also feels more organic, and a bit more on the traditional side of things. The soft, supple suede leather is also more prominent. Not as much as, say, in Gallo, Virat Valinka, Kelly Kalesh, but it still has a presence. After all, Barénia is their calfskin leather used by Hermès in their handbags like Birkin and Kelly. Of course, previously, they have taken inspiration from their other leathers for their fragrances, be it Dobli, Valinka and such. This comes across more velvety and smooth. The woodiness and the mossy aspects of the patchouli also make for a very satisfying dry down, more robust, broad-shouldered, not metallic or aroma chemical heavy as before. On top of all that, not many brands would put out something like this, so I'm glad they did. Maybe now they can go ahead and create that long overdue Hermès patchouli. Next is yet another flanker, but this time it also marks the 100th anniversary of a legendary amber. Of course, I'm talking about Shalimar Essence, composed by Delphine Yalc. I consider this to be a counterpart to Abbey Rouge Privé in many ways, in that this latest flanker feels less like a reinvention and more like a gentle recalibration. After spending time with it, wearing it side by side with the Eau de Parfum, that is my conclusion. It is still unmistakably Shalimar. Rather than reframing things as much as they did with their millésime releases, it seems like Guerlain has chosen restraint. In terms of development, the grand opening of Bergamote is softened and the spotlight is given to the vanilla. Not much of the growling labdanum, no animalic undertones, none of the temple-like sensuality that defines the original. It's more simple, dare I say even commercial in a good way. It seems to go for more intimate warmth. There is powdery iris, some floral nuances, sort of cushioned by a supple, suede-like softness. It is sweet, just not overwhelmingly so. It does not bring back the rustic embellishments, be it the patchouli, the sandalwood, or the furry musks. Again, seems to be a calculated decision. There are even some minor hints of almondy heliotrope and violet, a little balsamic, which I reckon is more approachable by current standards. What this does particularly well is bridge building. There are clear nods to earlier vanilla-focused Guerlain creations, be it Millésime Vanille, Eau de la Vanille, even echoes of the Arts and Materials collection, only made more accessible, both stylistically and price-wise. That is why I said commercial before. A release designed to honor the original while also welcoming newcomers. For some, this may well be their first Shalimar. Again, finding comfort in a form of nostalgia while welcoming something new seems to be the recurring theme so far. I have liked some of the millésime flankers, but never committed to buying a bottle. This one finally fills that gap. In fact, it becomes only the third full bottle I have purchased from Guerlain in the past 5 years, alongside Abbey Rouge Privé and Iris Torrefié. I am not a completionist by any means, so any future flanker needs to be exceptional for me to consider purchasing, which is less likely. This one, though not paradigm shifting, not back to the glory days of the house or anything, it's not trying to be either, still turned out to be a good treat for the moment, for myself and I'm sure for many others. Chasing that with another different vanilla this time, Madagascar Le Baume Vanille from Parfum d'Empire, composed by Marc-Antoine Kurkdjian. They have been releasing one fragrance a year consistently, so I have been looking forward to this. Another niche brand which has been around for more than 20 years, yet very consistent. I would even say some of their best creations have been in the last 5 years, which is not the case for many other brands. In fact, leaving aside some of the legacy niche brands, I find them to be the most interesting house at the moment, constantly putting out fantastic creations. This one, I think, continues that tradition. It's not a conventional, calorific, gourmand vanilla, which is of course not something I expected from the brand anyways. It's more of an unadulterated, rustic, spicy take on vanilla, and by extension, an ode to Madagascar itself. It is apparently inspired by a drink, an aged vanilla-infused rum that the perfumer, got to taste when spending time with a friend of his in Madagascar. As such, it has this big, bold, boozy rum that has been allowed to age and mature. The vanilla side of the affair itself is rather complex. It retains some of the bitterness, this kind of oily, balsamic texture, this natural, pungent spiciness, this vegetal, sun-cured quality as well. There is some leathery tobacco, even some hints of dry spices, toffee, all accentuated further by the supporting notes. It maintains this kind of gothic mysticism on folklore sensibilities of the actual vanilla pods themselves. It could be attributed to using it in different forms, I think. Vanilla tincture, CO2 extract, and Absolute. It is still immensely wearable, not too dense or rich. In fact, I wish it was a little more diffusive. Nonetheless, I think it deserves its place in this collection. It continues the brand's winning streak. If they keep going like this for another 5 years or so, they will truly become a Hall of Fame level of niche brand. So that's the new releases from 2025. Some others like Echal from Nila Vermeer Creations I did not end up buying, but worth mentioning. Again, I will leave them in the description. Now for my remaining additions, I only realized before recording that there is an Ambre theme going on. From 2024, this is Ambre Liquide by Astier de Villatte. Once again composed by Dominique Ropion. It was on my fall list for this year. Another noteworthy addition to this great brand. The perfumer and the owners seem to approach these creations as more research-oriented than usual. They collaborate with historians to kind of uncover formulas of perfumes from different time periods and try to do reinterpretations. Of course, compliant with current standards, regulations, and so forth. For instance, a few years before, they recreated formulas used by Romans, Greeks, and Egyptians. It was released in a set called 3 Historical Perfumes. I've done a dedicated video on that. This one, Ambre Liquide, is said to be based on a recipe from the Middle Ages. It also seems to share some similarities with the other compositions from this lineup. It is spicy, resinous, lots of dry cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, somewhat aniseic and sharp, even a tea-like inflection. It feels like a dry gum resin, and yet there's a fluidity to it as per the name. There is some old-fashioned myrrh, along with dry, dusty, classic amber. This kind of liquid feeling seems to be partly from the rose, which feels like rose water here, giving this rose-like hue to the amber as well. Very warm and comforting. That is why it feels more approachable, like a conventional fragrance. That is in comparison to the other 3, which are more medicinal, recipe-like. Can be a bit of an acquired taste. So if you are new to the brand, this wouldn't be a bad place to start. Keeping with the amber theme, this time with incense added, this is Samharam from 2017 by Arte Profumi. I have seen this brand in passing before, particularly for their burnt sugar fragrance called Sucre Noir. I think it has a cult following in Italy for whatever reason. Some other smoky fragrances as well. Then this one got my attention when I was a boy, mainly because of the name. Kind of sounds similar to an Indian word from mythology. It usually means cosmic annihilation. Then I came to know the fragrance is not based on that. It's actually a reference to a port city in Oman, which played a key role in incense trade. And to go with that story, this ended up being a glorious incense fragrance. It does not go in the typical aldehydic, cashmere-infused, liturgical, peppery incense direction. It's more ambery, red-toned as per the bottle, just drowned in embers, flames, really capturing this desert nomad, night fire kind of setting. It does not hold back from the animalic aspects. There is lots of musky labdanum, this pasture-like facet, a very prominent myrrh, which is giving that meditative, ancient temple smoke-like sensation. It reminds me of loba from South Asian, even some Middle Eastern countries. It's a traditional resin that is burnt, and then the smoke is gently waved around a person's head and face. In fact, all around the home. It is supposed to be an act of protection and purification, not just perfume. This one feels like that. It's also woody, balsamic, peppery, maybe even a hint of salty amber green there. Everything dries down to this amber, notably a sweet benzoin. Truly sensational. I got it from a discounter in spring, already put a decent dent during this fall and winter. I've been going down this rabbit hole of Italian incense perfumes for some years, and this has overtaken pretty much everything else I've smelled so far, even to become my current favorite incense. I pretty much never say that with new additions, but I think in this case it seems justified. Let's take a break from ambers and go with another theme I've been obsessed with in the last few years, which is equestrian inspired fragrances. I've managed to acquire some of the best out there, starting from Corpus Equus, Roc, Paddock, Rouard, so I thought I was all good. Then a friend of mine showed me this sample set and said, "Do you know there is this brand which has an entire collection dedicated to horses?" I was like, "Say what?" It was this brand called Maison. I tested them and one stood out for me. Unfortunately, there were two issues. One, the pricing was €300 for 60 ml, which is just completely over the top. Second, the brand was based in the US and does not ship to France. So I kind of forgot about it. Then later, by accident, I came to know they are selling off an older batch for 50% off. So I had to summon a few fellow perfume creatures to get it over to me. This is called Rotano from 2019, composed by Carlos Benaim. This is a musky, leathery fragrance with this strange solar inflection. It has this soft, horsey, saddle leather coming through as a dominant note. Apparently, the perfumer did some molecular reconstitution to come up with a stallion accord. There are some resinous attributes to it, but they are kept at bay. It also has this dirty to clean contrast going for it. A bit green, sunny, hazy, serene, meadow-like. Eventually, it settles on this musty, musky, rather dry, warm, beastly, yet calm and soft scent. Another worthwhile addition to my equestrian-themed fragrances. Coming back to ambers, we are going to a house known for their ambers, Maitre, Parfumeur et Gantier. This is Ambre Précieux, the Ultime version from 2014. I have been trying and testing the original by Jean-François Laporte for years. It came out in the late 80s. It took a different direction from your traditional Centennial ambers from early on, focused more on the resinous side of things, and modernized it, at least for that time. I do like it, but just something about it was not compelling enough for me to get a full bottle. Most likely because it has been reimagined so many times to the point that scent profile has become commonplace. Kind of a checkbox for every brand. After a long time struggling to find a tester of the Ultime version, I finally got to test it and it just closed the gap for me. It just feels like a richer exploration of that theme. It's a genuine follow-up in that it maintains that soft 18th century red carpets, velvety, traditional amber rounded off with a sandalwood base. It is kind of a signature for this brand. Very ornate but still wearable. It just goes more into the darker resinous territory, more labdanum than vanilla, less sweet, more balsamic. The aromatic components give it more character as well. Overall, it's fuller and richer than the original interpretation. Certainly a noteworthy amber creation. Speaking of which, yet another amber from a brand that I thought I would never buy from again. This is Absolue pour le soir from Maison Kurkdjian. Initially released in 2010, then relaunched in 2024. I don't care much for the latest work of Kurkdjian, be it for his brand or for Dior. He seems to have fully embraced this celebrity lifestyle, just going with the flow of things from LVMH. Maybe his artistic approach has also evolved to making more and more easily approachable smells. And it seems to have paid off. I mean, the one red crystal scent is the kind of creation that many perfumers dream of. So from a certain point of view, it's all great, it's all understandable. I just wish there were a few more surprises here and there. The most excitement for this brand since years is once again because of nostalgia. I liked the initial version, but did not go through with the purchase. I was probably stingy about the retail price, the bottle being 70 ml. Maybe did not think I would get to wear it a lot. Or simply, it just wasn't the time yet. Then we come to 2024. MFK starts re-releasing some of their discontinued fragrances under a new collection called My Intimate Perfumes. Pomme, Ciel de Gaume, Le Beau, and a few others are part of it. Maybe they thought the brand is now big enough to take some risks, or they realized there's a target audience for this style of perfume now. Nevertheless, I'm glad they did, because some of those earlier creations felt so genuine. This one is a warm, spicy, musky take on amber. Lots of honey, resins, particularly this gauzy benzoin. Quite a bit of cumin coming through as well, adding this bodily, sensual warmth. It's complemented by the stylish rose and woody nuances, all settling on this musky, growling amber, bringing this golden hour, candle wax, upscale, urban soiree-like sensation. Just absolutely brilliant. In comparison to the original, the claws have been trimmed a little, but the dry down is just as good. This time, I hope it sticks around, because I think it is not only this perfumer's best work, but one of the best creations in the last couple of decades. One additional mention to a Frederic Malle. We had no new release this year since the man stepped down from the brand. Instead, what I managed to get was this 15th anniversary edition, all red bottle of Portrait of a Lady. It first came out in 2010, composed by Dominique Ropion, of course. I don't usually chase special editions. I was not too keen on the synesthesia bottles they did a few years back. But when this was first revealed, it caught my attention with how striking it was. Still, I wanted to see it in person before committing. As it turned out, a friend of mine bought two versions. A simpler packaging on the larger collector's box that included photographs by David Sims, also a portrait of Helmut Newton. As nice as it was, it seemed like it was going to take too much space, so I leaned more toward the simpler presentation instead. We ended up swapping bottles, one of my regular releases, for this anniversary edition. I was quite happy with the trade instead of paying retail. I mean, what more can be said about Portrait? It's a true icon of modern perfumery, a baroque, velvety, expansive rose patchouli coupled with amber. The kind of materials here, especially the rose, is rather particular. Turkish rose extraction in copper vessels, patchouli heart, new wave of synthetics and so forth. Which is why many fragrances that try to create something similar don't even come close. It's also got this fresh, spicy, clove and cinnamon combo from Geranium pour Monsieur up top. Some incense and amber forming this reassuring base. There is usually this exaggeration that if a fragrance is a bit different, that makes it automatically bad. I don't subscribe to that notion. I think this is still in good shape, at least so far. Next year, if Estée Lauder decides to launch an extrait version or something, that will be a different story. This one is still good though. It was on my list of the best fragrances of the century, and deservedly so. Alright, with the new additions out of the way, now for my very long wish list of 3 fragrances. Like I said before, I'm trying to be even more strict with my purchases. Plus, these 3 I have wanted for some time. First is Un Bel Amour d'été from Parfum d'Empire. I liked it when it was released, but over the months I've come to really enjoy it, so I will be picking up a 50 ml next year. A superb, solar, floral woody perfume. Next is Moher from Nila Vermeer. I was contemplating the price, whether I should go with the EDP or the extrait version. It's been the case for 4 or 5 years at this point. It was the first one I liked from the brand, and yet I have since gotten 3 of their fragrances, except this one. So I think I'm going to end up getting the EDP sometime next year. The last one is from a favorite brand of mine. I have liked this fragrance for a long time, went through a few samples and such, but again never got to purchase it because it can be expensive and hard to find. Then I got to test it again when I was at their boutique in Palais Royal, and it just won me over. It is Musk Kublai Khan from Serge Lutens. I have a couple of decent offers for an older bottle, so I think I will go through with the purchase sometime next year. With all that being said, that's been my retrospective of 2025, including new additions. Till I see you again in 2026, happy holidays to everyone. And as always, thanks for watching, take care, and ciao.